Greetings, beautiful souls. Come with me to a land of imagination. It's your favorite author, Lisa Walker McCrae, with another compelling story time from the pages of my novel, A Peculiar Kind of Love. Remember, you guys, these videos are for entertainment purposes only. First and foremost, big praise to the Most High Yah, and a special shout out to those of you who are still chiming in, lending me your ears. Much love from this way. With that being said, are you guys ready to fuel those imaginations and turn some pages? Awesome. Clarence, set the stage. Okay, beautiful souls, here's a quick recap on our village to catch you guys up to speed. First, we have Drew, who'd been beating herself up about her actions with Zay. Thankfully, Ma Tate stepped up on the scene just in time to give her some good guidance. First, she told Drew it was imperative that she called Zay for the article he'd written in his father's magazine about Serenity Meadows and to apologize for her actions, putting the man out in the rain. Then Ma Tate encouraged Drew to allow Zay to woo her. She expressed there was nothing wrong with it as long as her feelings for Marcus were dead and that door was closed. So, what did Drew do? Yes, took the advice and called Zay. The blessing in it all was Drew and Zay cleared the air and got an understanding. The pair also got to know each other a little better, which led to them planning a birthday date to celebrate Asher's, which is Zay's son, and Drew's birthday. Yes, you guys, this man has a son. Now, usually Drew didn't give guys with baby mothers a second glance, but Zay seemed to have his under control. So when we left Drew, she was in debate about taking Zay up on his invitation/date to bounce around. Y'all, this man offered Drew a birthday cake to sway her decision in his favor. Now, y'all know our girl is a sucker for food. Question is, did she say yes? We shall see. Okay, loves, now that y'all all caught up, let's dive into those imaginations. Of course, we're back at Serenity Meadows where the action happens, and we find Rain eyeing Mr. Pete as he walked past the check-in counter. She could tell by the smirk on his face, Pete still found it humorous that she almost pissed her pants the other day. Compliments to him. I can't stand Mr. Pete, Rain stated, scrolling her face. Tevin chuckled. He asked Rain what Pete did to her. She aggravatedly expressed how he was always lurking and snooping around. Tevin raised a brow. He asked Rain what she meant by her statement because Pete was the groundskeeper and it was his job to look out for things. Rain was like, whatever, filling the crystal candy dish with Lifesavers candies. Eyeing Rain, Tevin spoke. He's not the only one lurking and snooping. Rain paused. Her heart beat a rhythm of panic. Had Pete spilled the beans about her eavesdropping? And if so, how was she supposed to explain her deceitful behavior to Tevin? That's crazy. Who's the other spy? Rain asked all nonchalantly, trying to play the conversation down, fearing she'd been found out. Taking a lifesaver from the dish, Tevin took his time responding. He wanted to see how well Rain carried herself under pressure. Rain was becoming aggravated with Tevin's game. For him to pretend he didn't know she was eavesdropping and showing more interest in a piece of candy instead of releasing her from the guilt and fear she suffered was torture. Ugh, Rain screamed in her head. She was just about to confess when Tevin spoke. I saw you listening at the tool shed door when me and Dina were talking. Rain let out a sigh. Whew, I'm glad that's out. Tevin raised a brow. She then laughed out, patting one of her afro puffs as if she'd done him a favor. What? Tevin stated and asked, looking at Rain sideways. With no sincerity at all, Rain halfway apologized. Then she admitted to Tevin she was about to tell him, but he beat her to it. What kind of foolishness? Anyway, shaking his head, Tevin took a lifesaver from the candy dish and headed towards the back door. But before he departed, he looked at Rain and sarcastically stated at least they all knew she was majoring in the right field of study. Rain's face held a look of surprise and disgrace. She felt insulted, but she deserved every bit of hell Tevin gave her. Simultaneously, Drew was wrapping up her morning meditation with the guests when she saw Tevin from the sunroom marching to the tool shed like he was going to war. Drew looked over at the guests, hoping they didn't witness the unprofessional acts going on. It was bad enough they'd already been subjected to the reunion. Now, Drew tried giving Tevin space to figure things out, but she could clearly see he was really struggling with his demons. She exhaled, then addressed a small group. Thank you all for your time. Morning meditation was excellent and refreshing. Drew then invited the guests to some good old breakfast Miss Sue prepared. The guests quickly gathered their things, hurrying off to the breakfast room. They were excited about Miss Sue's breakfast. Remember, you guys, morning meditation starts at 6 if any of you were planning to attend, Drew reminded. She then asked y'all for patience as she left the sunroom and walked over to the check-in counter. Rain, what's wrong with Tevin? Drew asked as she approached. Rain lied, telling Drew she didn't realize anything was wrong with Tevin. Eyeing Rain with suspicion, Drew was no fool and knew she wasn't being honest. You don't know? Drew asked, unconvinced. Rain shook her head repeatedly. Drew would let her lie live for now, but Rain would have to eventually kill it with the truth sooner or later. Stepping backwards into her office, Drew held up 2 fingers in a V sign pointed at her eyes, gesturing to Rain that she was watching her. Yes, Drew, keep an eye on that one. Anywho, Drew was now sitting at her desk, and it had been all of 5 minutes, and she'd found herself gazing out of the window thinking about Zay. She was still in the clouds from their lengthy conversation the night before. Drew thought about sending him a text but didn't want to seem thirsty. More so, she was just excited to have someone to conversate with. Oh snap, looks like Zay got our girl's attention. Anywho, just as a smile was about to grace Drew's face, it was replaced with a curious frown. Why is there a Friendly Market van here? Drew asked Self. She didn't recall ordering any groceries. She called out for Rain. Rushing into the office, Rain asked Drew what she needed. Drew told her there was a Friendly Market van in the drive and she wanted to know if Miss Sue ordered anything. No, not that I know of, Rain confirmed. Drew looked up from her computer at Rain, then out at the Friendly Market van. Her eyes saw something they couldn't unsee. Carl was standing outside the van wearing some khaki pants, a green polo shirt with the Friendly Market logo on it, along with an apron displaying the same logo. He grabbed a bag from the van and started inside. Oh my goodness, what is this man up to now? Drew asked Self. Carl is a man of many characters, I tell ya. Meanwhile, Rain was on her way out to the tool shed. She knew Carl's explanation for pulling up looking like Employee of the Month would be a good one, but right now she needed to get some things straight with Tevin. Rain knocked at the tool shed's door waiting for permission to enter. There was no response. I know he hear me, Rain stated, knocking a second time. She could hear music, so she knew Tevin had to be in there. Rain twirled her hair, thinking how awful and awkward it would be if she'd messed things up with Tevin. They'd really gotten to know each other and Rain really liked him, so it thumped at her heart to think she may have ruined their friendship over something as stupid as eavesdropping when she could have just asked Tevin what was going on. Rain contemplated. Pete shook his head, watching her give intense thought to what her next move should be. The whole situation humored him. He didn't understand why young people always had to think about the simplest things. Pete thought. Back in his day, if one was interested in someone, they'd just go for it and worry about the ifs later. He was over this nonsense. What are you waiting on? He in there. Go in. Rain's spirit went up to Yah. Pete had done it again, but this time there was no leaky faucets. Mr. Pete, dang, Rain yelped out. Why you gotta be sneaking up on people like that? Dang, I wasn't even listening to anyone this time. Rain cleared up before Pete got the wrong impression. I really wasn't, Mr. Pete. Pete eyed Rain. He asked what she was waiting on. Rain went to explain why she was held up, but Pete interrupted. Ain't no need to wait. Tell the boy how you feel. You out here telling the birds. Mr. Pete walked off shaking his head, grumbling about how clueless and weak young people were. Rain in return grumbled to himself about how impatient and rude old people were. Oh Lord, these two are oil and water. Anyway, moving forward, Rain opened the door and stepped inside. She could see why Tevin couldn't hear her. He had the radio on and he had earbuds in. Rain walked over to the workbench where Tevin was lost in his work. She looked around at all the custom-made birdhouses hanging. There were all kinds, big ones, small ones, green ones, yellow ones, each with its own unique design. Wow, Rain said to self, bringing her attention back to Tevin. Looking down at him, she could see Tevin was broken and all she wanted to do was fix him. Rain softly called his name. He didn't respond. She called out louder. He still didn't hear her. So she did the next best thing and pulled the earbuds out. Tevin was startled. He almost fell out of his chair. Dang, girl, you need to knock before you enter, he stated rudely with the scroll of his face. Rain took a deep breath, calling on patience. She reminded herself she was there to salvage their friendship and would allow him this one time to be an ass. I knocked, but you didn't hear me, so Pete told me to come in, Rain informed. Tevin told her next time knock harder. Rain told Tevin he could probably hear her if he turned one of the radios off. She reached up to turn off the vintage radio. Hunties, before Rain hand could touch the knob, Tevin was already guiding it back down to her side. The pair stood face to face holding each other's stare. Baby, in that moment, Rain could have gotten Tevin to do whatever she wanted, except touch that radio. Man, don't touch that radio. I don't want to hear Pete's mouth about that radio. Tevin further explained that's why he wore the earbuds. Don't ever touch that radio, man, he warned once more. Rain could tell by Tevin's intense warning there had been some problems behind that radio. There was an awkward silence. Rain looked around the shed, bringing up the birdhouses in hopes to open up the floor for conversation. Did you make all these, she asked. Tevin told her every one. Rain complimented his work. She then asked who taught him the craft. Tevin informed his father did whenever he wasn't in jail. Rain didn't know how to respond. Tevin grew frustrated. He slapped a metal ruler on the workbench. Rain jumped. What do you want? Tevin rudely asked. Rain's first thoughts were to get the hell out of there. The anger and hurt she was now feeling from Tevin's outburst confused her. Anyone with good sense would have left, but for some strange reason, Rain stayed. I'm trying to be your friend, she voiced. Tevin told her he didn't ask for her friendship. Rain was done with Tevin's ego. She took the ruler from his hand, then slapped it on the workbench. How does it feel, Tevin? How does it feel? She repeated with each hit of 4. Tevin was quiet. Actually, he was unable to speak. Rain's actions had him speechless. Rain was now trying to catch her calm. She spoke in the sweetest, softest voice she could find hidden under the anger. Listen to me, immature. Throwing your little tantrum isn't going to solve your problems. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. Using your misfortune for a crutch to act stupid? Please admit and accept your mother was a drunk. This makes it easier for you. Rain went on to express to Tevin everyone had gone through something in life, some more than others. So what made him better than anyone else that he thought he didn't have to? Rain took a deep breath, then exhaled her frustrations with Tevin. She continued, I came out here to apologize and salvage what little friendship I thought we had left. But since you're out here throwing yourself a pity party, I'll run fetch some balloons. Rain handed Tevin the ruler, informing him her loyalty couldn't be measured. Good day, Ethan. She left the shed, leaving Tevin with his thoughts. Okay, Rain got a little fight in her. Anywho, after telling Tevin how she felt, Rain took her place behind the check-in counter, trying to calm herself. At this point, she didn't care if her and Tevin still had a friendship or not. The way he just made her feel threw up a major red flag. Calm down, Rain encouraged Self, checking the request basket to see if any of the guests needed anything. While going through the request basket, laughter rang out from Drew's office. Rain now regretted she'd missed out on Carl's explanation for being dressed like a bad boy. It would have been more entertaining than being humiliated by Tevin. In the meantime, on the other side of the office door, Drew was in tears laughing at her father strutting around modeling off his checkout boy uniform. I can't believe you bought the Friendly Market. What were you thinking, Daddy? You don't know the first thing about running a grocery store. Smoothing out his apron, Carl reminded Drew he ran his own business for years. That was a staffing agency, not a grocery store. There will be a difference, Drew voiced. Carl told her it's all the same to him. Drew shook her head. There was no reason to talk her dad out of this. He'd already signed the papers and designed new uniforms. So, she instead went over and gave her dad a kiss on the cheek. Congratulations, Daddy. I pray your business is prosperous. Carl thanked Drew. He then asked her if he could have a conversation with her. Sure, Drew welcomed, taking a seat on the chase. She knew the conversation was about to get deep by the way Carl cleared his throat. He spoke. Drew, you know I've never tried to get into your business or tell you what to do. Reason being, I didn't feel entitled. But through the years, I believe I've gained a little entitlement. At least enough to give you some good sound advice. Drew made herself comfortable. She'd heard everyone else's advice. Why not a little more? Give it to me, Daddy. It's nothing like getting advice from your old man. Drew rubbed Carl's hand, handing him a welcoming smile. Carl wanted to take her into his arms, but willed himself to stay the course. He informed Drew he'd spoken with Marcus and what he did was reckless. Carl further explained he couldn't argue Marcus's reason, but he knew sometimes people could get so desperate they'd try anything. No, Daddy. I didn't need for him to try anything. I need for him to think. My gosh, he was locked up 3 years for not thinking. Carl chuckled, agreeing he couldn't argue with that. But in Marcus's defense, he did encourage Drew to have a conversation with him because he was living a life of regret right now, and he knew how that felt. Have a sit down with him, sweetheart. Hear him out. A lot of the time when people admit they're wrong, this allows them to accept the consequences they have to face. Drew peered out of the window. She knew the advice given by her father was good, but the fear of not having Marcus in her life was kind of scary. Eyeing Drew, Carl told her the faster she did this, the easier it would be for things to fall in place. Drew exhaled. Well, looks like Drew and Tevin both have some thinking to do about relationships and friendships. Things are getting complicated, huh? Or things could be falling into place. I guess you guys will just have to join me back here at Imagination Station to find out. Because that's it for this story time and this chapter. I pray you all have been entertained. Until we meet again, keep this in mind. We fail when we fail to try. Rosa Parks. Y'all bless this reading and yourselves. Smooches.